Okay, feel free to start, Jonathan.
So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to all the participants today, depending where you are on the globe. My name is Jonathan. I'm from Utilis, and we'll be spending the next part of the hour talking about SAR Analytics and the applicability of that into condition assessment for pipelines for water. I'd like to start off by thanking the Water Law Specialist Group from IWA for setting up this webinar series, and specifically the Secretary, Mr. Gary Wyeth, has been a lot of help in putting this together, and I think it's a great platform for sharing information among professionals, and I hope you enjoy. I'll be stopping through the different parts, but then feel free to fill in any kind of questions you may have in the chat, and we'll have time at the end to answer all of your questions. And if you need other clarifications, we can do that offline. So let's begin. So today we're going to talk about advancing Earth's resiliency with SAR Analytics. We're going to talk about the Utilis product called Masterplan, which is basically a synthetic apparature radar, or SAR infrastructure condition assessment tool that will enable you to make smarter decisions. It will enable water utilities to invest in a better way, looking at the overall situation of their network. But before we get into all the value propositions and exactly how the technology works and what it is that we do, I'll go into a little bit about the scientific background having to do with using synthetic apparature radar. So SAR technology, and I'll be using the word SAR from now on moving forward, is a technology that was developed in the 1980s, more or less 50 years ago. And it was developed for the use of looking below surface and trying to predict many kinds of phenomenon, some of them having to do with the movement of tectonic plates, other than having to do with weather issues or having to do with forestry or agriculture, many different things. I'll talk about in my next slide exactly how SAR works and the relevancy to finding water underground and how exactly that works. But just wanted to let you know that Utilis did not invent SAR technology. This is a very well-established and well-based technology. And we happen to be the first company that has commercialized on some of its abilities. So how exactly does SAR work? SAR is, as I mentioned before, synthetic apparature radar. We have this radar mounted on a satellite. By the way, the satellites that we're using are not ours. There are currently 3 satellites in the sky today that enable us to use SAR technology with the L-band frequency. And basically what happens, you have a satellite that's orbiting Earth very quickly, covering every point on Earth. And because of the fact that it's 637 kilometers above ground, when it takes a snapshot image of any point on Earth, you're able to get a very large perspective. We're talking about thousands of square kilometers all at once, being able to snapshot an entire city, 2 or 3 different water networks, an entire region. To some extent, it could also be an entire country, because there's no limit to the amount of images that we can take. But what is it that we're using on this radar that's mounted on the satellite, and how does it work? So imagine that you're using a radar. Radar sends out electromagnetic pulses. It comes down from the satellite, 637 kilometers above ground at the speed of light. It penetrates the ground and captures information. Okay, what is it capturing? It's capturing water mixing with the soil below ground. Okay, we're not looking for any kind of vegetation. We're not looking for any kind of soil moisture on the surface. We're looking for water mixing with the ground from the surface layer till roughly about 5 meters. Okay, now The specific frequency and wavelength that we use enables us, number one, to penetrate any kind of surface except metallic. So it can work in the urban network, for example, penetrating concrete, asphalt, where our pipes are below the ground. And also with the specific frequency that we use, we're able to differentiate between the different types of water that are in the ground. So we know that there's potable water coming from pipes, there's wastewater that's exfiltrating from the wastewater channels, there's groundwater, many, many different things. We want to be able to focus. Okay, now how does this all work? Let's take, for example, a pipe that's leaking. Okay, it's dripping or gushing. The water is dripping or gushing out of it, and it's mixing with the soil that's around it. Now, every two elements in nature, when they touch, they have a chemical reaction. And the chemical reaction has an electrical output, which is unique to the two elements that are touching. So when water and soil touch, they have a chemical reaction. And the output is what we call a dielectric signature or a unique electrical output, which is 100% unique between potable water. Again, we're able to differentiate between the different types of water and soil. Okay, so we're able to take subterranean data, okay, using SAR Analytics, using some algorithms and patented processes that we've developed, taking out all the noise that would normally occur in a city, coming from buildings, vegetation, cars, many other different types of things, and giving a customer an accurate map of where he has problems, where there are leaks, where the ground is saturated from soil, where the soil is saturated, and basically being able to do that on the level of thousands of square kilometers gives our customer for the first time real data, not predictive, but real data of the situation right now, and gives him a few values of how he needs to act and what he needs to do about it. So that's pretty much about the technology. I'm sure in the question part, there'll be a lot of questions. Absolutely no problem. I can answer them all, but we will be moving forward. I hope this was clear. So Utilis has been using this technology for leak detection. Okay, as I mentioned, the satellite orbits the Earth. We can cover every point on Earth. We've done over 400 projects in 55 countries. We verified using our technology and obviously local teams, more than 28,000 leaks. We're looking at close to 35,000 as I speak today in April 2021. We're also looking at saving energy. We're looking at reducing carbon emissions. Overall, bringing to resiliency of the water company and looking at a tool that will enable them to predict basically predict the return on investment from the leak detection program, something that today is not very possible due to the fact that benchmarking is very difficult when you don't have a lot of data. So I'm not going to talk about leak detection, though this is the main focus of our company until now and the majority of our business. And we are working, as I mentioned, in many different places with lots of success. What I'm going to talk today about is Masterplan. Masterplan is a product that was launched just a few months ago. It's based on the same technology of leak detection. So not only is SAR technology a reliable, known source of information, but also based on a technology that's been proven in the last 5 years in 55 different countries with lots of returning customers. And we're looking to take the actionable operational data of leak detection into the management and investment sphere. So we know that today, the majority of water utilities are replacing a certain percentage of their pipe per year, and they need to identify which one of those is better. They would also like to have a better view of their city to try and prioritize where they should, for example, send out teams to investigate where there are higher probabilities of failures, et cetera, et cetera. And again, we're not talking about a predictive model. We're talking about what at this point in time is the radar showing us with regards to saturated soil around our water pipes. So how exactly does it work? I mentioned before, this is very similar to the product that we have today. So the radar captures the information. Okay, radars are made out of pixels. We are looking at within one image, roughly 500,000 pixels. The algorithm picks out the ones that have to do specifically with potable water or soil moisture. Okay, and then we put it onto a map correlating with the customer's pipes, though it's not needed because we know that the majority of the pipes run under the roads, but it is a much better or it's more efficient to use it in correlation with their pipe network, just from an efficiency point of view. And we give them information, okay? What does this information bring? This information brings them to look at a geographical data analysis product that enables them to assess the condition of their pipe network based on our SAR algorithms. And it can be looked at from a pipe segment point of view, okay? And it can also be looked at zoomed out from a DMA point of view if they have DMAs. Otherwise, we could look at different towns that are within the same utility or different neighborhoods within a bigger city if there are no DMAs, or if there are, maybe we're using pressure zones, whatever it may be. Okay, none of this really is new because today, when you're trying to do condition assessment, water utilities are already using sets of information to try and prioritize their pipe replacement or try and understand the overall situation of their network, but they are missing some critical information that we can offer, which is the exact amount of potable water affecting their network over time. And captured in this exact moment. And also we'll talk about the levels of salt in the soil. I'll get to that in just a minute. So how do we come to this kind of prioritization? How are we able to understand how this all works? So we've studied and reanalyzed imageries, SAR imageries. We've learned the importance of Utilis indications and the repetitiveness. And this has allowed us to do scoring, basically to arrive at a certain level of deficiency of either a pipe or channel segment. Channel obviously is talking about wastewater, which is also applicable for. And the statistical data analysis shows us 3 types of indications. So what do? We take 2 SAR images of the same location, and then we compare them. And this comparison, along with the analysis and new algorithms that we develop, allow us to come to a conclusion as to how we're going to score a specific segment of pipe, right? Today, we score a specific segment of pipe based on its age, maybe leaks that were there, maybe the material, maybe we've done some sampling in the area. I don't know what exactly it was, but here we're adding another layer of information, okay? We want to enhance the decision-making of water utilities that are spending and must spend on an annual basis at least a few million, sometimes tens of millions, depends on the size of the water utility, in pipe replacement. And we're trying to give them more information based on, again, a reliable source of data, okay? SAR technology, it's proven 100% that it can find water in the ground. And also, of course, based on our experience in the last 5 years with doing leak detection. Okay, so we're enabling more information for enabling how to create scoring for the pipe segments in order to prioritize their replacement. So how is it delivered? It's delivered in 3 different ways. One of them is a GIS data set. So basically, all this information can be uploaded directly into, for example, the contingency of failure model that you may already have if you're using Innovise, or if you're using another paid for system, or the water utility has their own kind of model or AI predictive model, whatever it may be, okay? And this can go directly into that as, again, another layer of information to boost their confidence in their decision-making. We're also supplying a PDF report based on the information that we've supplied, basically giving them a visualization as to 24% of my pipe is in a high deficiency, 12% is medium, et cetera, et cetera. And this basically gives them the opportunity and an option to possibly, in some countries, depends on how the water utilities work. Every country, every state, every province is different, but you can go to the higher authority and say, look, based on this information, 24% of my network is in high deficiency. This is a very new technology, very viable. I also know, based on information that I've collected over the years, that that number makes sense. Please, Mr. Authority, give me the money I need in order to replace my pipes. Okay. We also supply a mobile view so that if the water utility would like to go out into the field and see exactly where they are based on our information, they can. And this is available either on a tablet or phone or a PC. This is what it would look like zooming in. Okay, so again, one of the great benefits of using SAR technology and remote sensing technology and all is that you're able to capture thousands and thousands of square kilometers all at once, but also zoom in to a very high level of efficiency that will enable you to do the pre-localization if we're talking about leak detection, but here we're talking about ranking of deficiency of pipe segments. So from 3,500 square kilometers or 5,000 square kilometers, zooming into 10, 15 meters of pipe that from our perspective should be considered medium high, using that also with the information that you have and coming to a better decision. Okay. This is an example of the technology that is put in already with the Innovi system. Okay. This is what it would look like if we put it into their contingency of failure model. Okay. Because this technology, in comparison to our leak detection solution, is not a close the circle solution where we give information, the teams go out, we're bringing in great efficiency, they're finding leaks and they're fixing them, they're saving water. This is a technology that's for its data, it's for decision making, it's for long-term planning and investment. And really the only thing that you can think about when you're supplying data is that you're supplying them a source of information that's reliable, that will enable them to make smarter and better decisions to some extent. How much is it going to make their decision 10% better, 20% better, 30% better? That depends on the existing model that they already have and depends on how they implement our technology in and how many layers of information, I'll talk about that in just a moment, how many layers of information they choose to integrate into their existing model to try and make smarter decisions. So I'm going to talk about now what are the ways to use Masterplan for the water utilities. So Masterplan for pipe replacement, that's what I've been talking about for the last 20 minutes or so. We have a few good quotes that I like to use. For example, the annual replacement plan is geared to reduce the chance of total failure of the network. Basically, water utilities have one job. Their job is to supply water continuously or try to supply water continuously to their customers. If they cannot do that, they're not doing their job. They have no reason to exist. And the only way to continue and do that, of course, they have to do leak detection. Of course, they have to do many, many, many different things, but they also must replace pipes a certain percentage per year because of the fact that pipes don't last forever. And even if you're going to replace or going to do leak detection, at some point it becomes redundant and the pipe needs to be replaced. So based on when we started preparing for this product, we went to our customers. As I mentioned before, we've done already more than 400 projects in 55 different countries. And on the majority level, they all told us these three sources of information are what they consider today before they sit down in September if the investment needs to be finished before the end of the calendar year, or if the financial year is a different place, like in Australia or other places, or in Thailand. If I'm not mistaken, it's July. So they need to sit down and they need to make a decision. So today they'll put together a committee and read the output of either what people are saying or some kind of report, if it's coming from an internal report or from a consulting engineer report, or they have some kind of internal or external software that's making these recommendations for them, and then they decide. And it's saying you should replace this pipe this year, but not this pipe. This pipe can be replaced in 3 years, and this pipe can be replaced in 4 years. And the majority of the data that they're basing themselves on is the pipe age and material, history of bursts, and physical visits and sampling. But the majority of our customers have also told us that this kind of information is not enough. Why? Because the pipe age and material can be affected by other factors. For example, a ductile iron pipe should have a lifespan of about 50 years. That being said, if it happens to be in a very corrosive environment, it could last 10 years. Our plastic pipe, depending on the material, could last even 100 years. If it was laid improperly, it could be finished within 5 years. And also, no one can predict, to some extent, the hydraulic balances within water systems. And even though you have a brand new pipe, unfortunately, we had some kind of hydraulic hammer that went through the system and it burst the majority of the pipes in some areas. And this is creating leaks in new pipes. So the fact that they're taking this into consideration is absolutely correct, but it can be affected by other factors. History of bursts. The literature tells us, IWA tells us, everyone knows that at least 50%, if not more, of the leaks do not surface, okay? Which means that the background leakage and unavoidable background leakage are still a huge problem for water utilities, but we don't know exactly where they are. And without being able to find them, we only know half of the story. And obviously, it would be best if we could dig and visit all the manholes and dig all next to all the pipes and look for problems, etc. But this is obviously too time-consuming and expensive. So if you're sitting in a committee trying to look at this information, you're taking into consideration that you have, let's say, 50 to 60% assurance that your decisions are correct. And I'm basing that not on the fact that I'm trying to sell anything or that I believe that our technology has a benefit, but based on the feedback that we've had from end customers. For example, Sam Bright, who's the asset manager at Yorkshire Water, relatively large water utility in the UK. And they take into consideration that every year they have serious doubts about the integrity of their decisions on investments and pipe replacement. Because also if you have an AI predictive model and software and you are sure that you're doing the best of the best, I think all of us can agree that any kind of model, AI or different, is only as good as the information that you put into it. And if the information that we put into it is 50 to 60% accurate, then the results that we get are 50 to 60% accurate. Is that as good as we can do today? Maybe. But if we can add some more layers of information and raising the level of assurance of our decision making, would that be better in the long term for decision making, for long-term investment? Definitely yes, because we'll be raising the assurance of decision making by, let's not go to the full 100%, but let's bring it up by 10, 20, 25, 30% more than it is today. Would that allow us to save money over time? Yes, because we would probably be reducing the amount of bursts in the future. We could potentially reduce the amount of percentage of pipe that needs to be replaced per year, because we would be replacing the right pipes instead of just guessing which pipes need to be replaced. This is just an example here showing that the majority of countries, for example, in Europe, some of them we don't have information, but on average, they're replacing between 0.5% and 1.5% of their network per year. If we talk about a pipe network of about 3,000 kilometers, which is a medium to large city in Europe, we're talking about somewhere between 6 and 10 million euros per year in investment. There are countries now that are receiving a lot of funds for pipe replacement because obviously the majority of the pipes in the world are deteriorating over time. So some water utilities are replacing also 5, 6, or 10% of the network per year, or else they're in the chance that they won't be able to supply water to their customers. Master plan for corrosivity. Okay, one of the main concerns today with metallic pipes is the fact that you can put them in the ground. Yes, they're better for leak detection. Obviously, they have resonance for acoustics, but in areas with corrosive soil, they don't last, and the cost is very high. But what if we could know in advance where we have corrosive soil? So today we have options of hydrological mapping. We have options of putting in sensors in the ground, many different things. I'll tell you that the majority of water companies that know that they have very corrosive soil are immediately changing to plastic. Is that the best decision for them? I'm not sure, because if we were able to map very accurately where exactly we have high corrosion, then we would know exactly if we need to replace a pipe, should it be metallic, should it be plastic? Or if we're building a new neighborhood and expanding the network, should we put plastic, should we put metal, et cetera, et cetera? What are the trends? How is it changing? In which seasons it's worse than others, okay? And over time. How is it that we receive? Again, this is nothing new. SAR technology is able to pick up differences in the soil having to do with either levels of saturation or levels of resistivity. Now, resistivity, just to simplify everything, let's say that it's salt. Okay, salt in the ground, or a level of salt in the ground, doesn't really affect anything. But when it comes in contact with any kind of moisture, okay, it immediately creates corrosivity. Now, I told you before that SAR technology is great in finding soil moisture, and that we have, one of our benefits is the fact that we're able to differentiate between the different types of water in the ground. But if we turned off the filter, we'd only be looking at soil moisture. Okay, now when you mix and create a hybrid layer between resistivity and soil moisture, then you're able to get information about where is my soil corrosive. Okay, maybe not in every season. Maybe there are differences. Maybe it's here, maybe it's there. But the ability to capture the entire network and get, again, very, very accurate information on the level of several meters, okay, is something that does not exist today from a physical sample, unless you're doing physical sampling. And even then, or by using sensors, it's a manipulation, a mathematical manipulation over the entire system, which is highly inaccurate. And last but not least, we believe in the holistic approach. So we think that the most or the more amount of data that you can have from one satellite image, again, remember, we're capturing thousands of information, thousands of square kilometers of information, and you can get as many layers of data as you like. So the yellow lines, okay, are a POI, a point of interest, indicating leaks. We can upload into our system or into your system all the work orders, all the leaks that have surfaced in the past, in the future, et cetera, et cetera. We can also calibrate with information having to do with any kind of noise loggers or sensors that you may have in your system. Then we're bringing in another layer. Okay, we're bringing in condition assessment for pipes. It happens to be here that this area is in high deficiency. Why? I could tell you again that we're looking at SAR information. SAR can find water. SAR can find water below ground, and we're choosing to look at the water below ground that's near your pipes, near the water utility infrastructure, okay? But also we're getting other indications here. We're saying, okay, Utilis symbolize these segments as high deficiency. They also show that there is actively some kind of leak here. That's the POI, the yellow highlight. We also have 2 leaks from the last, I don't know, year or 2. We also have an indicator of a sensor or a noise logger of some kind. So this makes sense that I should send out a team and try to think about, am I going to continue leak detection? Should we replace the pipes here? What should we do? If we replace it, now we added the layer of corrosivity. If we decide to replace the pipes here, should we replace them to metal again? Should we change to plastic? Should we continue leak detection? Because maybe it's cheaper to do leak detection than to replace it with another metallic pipe. But if I know that I have areas here with high corrosivity, if I replace it with a plastic pipe, I can save leak detection for hopefully next 20, 30 years. I won't have to go there again. So I know it's a lot for those of you who have never really heard about Utilis, our technology, what we do before. As promised, I think there's plenty of time for questions, at least half an hour, and we can continue offline. I'd just like to finish with 2 things. Number 1, Utilis did not invent any technology. The technology that we're using, SAR, okay, synthetic aperture radar, has been used for the identification of soil moisture and salinity in the ground for the last 50 years. This is something that any professor, any person working in hydraulics will be able to sign off on. The only thing here is that Utilis is commercialized on this kind of technology, enabling water utilities to be smarter with their efforts, smarter with their investments, more efficient with their physical work on the day-to-day operations, okay? And allowing the overall capture of information from thousands of square kilometers, enabling the end customer to see his entire network as it is right now in this second, and making decisions, being able to zoom in to the level of pre-localization of a leak, or being able to see the deficiency of some pipe segments, moving into meters of patches of corrosivity within the ground that could or could not affect his decision-making, affect his water utility, affect his investment in the future, is something that currently we are the only technology that can supply this, because of the fact that we are the only ones using SAR L-band analytics that enable us to capture information from below surface. Okay, I'll finish the way we started. We're looking to help water utilities in these days create resiliency, enable them to withstand with the SDGs. As the world is going further towards water scarcity, further towards collapse of networks due to the fact that the pipes are old and we can't replace all of them all at once because no one has the budget for that, we need to start thinking smarter. Our technology is a way, a tool, one of the options to address your network and try to see what it is we can do and how we can deal with it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Jonathan. That was an interesting presentation, and I think helped people understand a bit better how satellite technology works in detecting leaks. But obviously, you're using it in a different way, the same technology in a different way here. I was interested. Oh, before I go on, if anybody has any questions for Jonathan, they can type them into the chat function, and then I'll ask him the questions. You mentioned about the GIS data, and then also you also have age and material of pipes and burst frequency. Does all of that information go into your system, or does that system go into the GIS used to analyze it that way?
Great question, Gary. Thank you. We are a supplier of SAR data. We are not a supplier of condition assessment. We do offer a platform that the water utility can add to. They can put in their information, but our consideration of the data that we supply, the levels of deficiency, is only based on the SAR information. So they'll need to, either with our system or in their existing softwares, take into consideration all the other factors and try to understand better what is the actual situation of each segment.
Okay. We've got a question from David, which is, hi, is the SAR Analytics program dependent on the satellite technology?
So the satellite itself is just the body that our radar is mounted on. By the way, we have done projects already where the radar is mounted on an airplane. This has enabled us to get higher resolution. We're doing some projects now in Europe with that. That being said, the satellite per se has really no effect on the results that we're getting. The results and the technology is fully based on the capabilities of the radar itself. I will say that the benefit of using a satellite that's already in orbit is the fact that it covers every point on Earth roughly every 2 weeks. So it enables us full coverage of the globe. And also because of the fact that we're so high up, almost 700 kilometers in the air, the swath size of the imagery is very, very large. I'll also say that the satellites themselves do not belong to us as a company. We're not a satellite company. We're a data supplying company. The satellites that we're using belong either to the Japanese or Argentinian aerospace program. And currently they're the only 3 satellites that enable L-band SAR data collection. I hope that answers the question.
Okay. If you need any further clarification, David, just type it in. We have a question from Isan. Well, actually, he's got 2 questions. The second one is, the pictures are from which satellite? But I think you just mentioned the three satellites that they come from. But his first question is, this satellite data should be available for how many years for accurate prediction?
That's a very good question. We're not looking at historical data. We trust that the water utilities to some extent have already collected information, again, about the age of the pipes, about the materials, about bursts and leaks that they've had. And we're looking to supply new data for better decision-making. So we're looking to supply information that is from today, okay? Let's say, for example, we come to some kind of an agreement that you would like to try this technology with whatever water company or country that you're coming from. We'll take one image, and then we can take either a consecutive image within 2 weeks or any time between, we don't recommend more than 12 to 18 months based on the IWA information that the majority of the leaks will be taken care of / surface within anywhere between 1 to 2 years. So as we all know, the water system is very, very dynamic. So we'll be taking new information, bringing new data to the table that will hopefully enable you to make your decisions easier.
Okay, how does that relate to areas where you have high rainfall, like tropical zones, or you have areas where you have a lot of droughts? Does that affect the results year on year, or month on month? Okay, great question. With regards to the technology, I'll say that in theory, the drier the soil, the deeper the penetration and the better the results, okay, overall. I'll also say that we've done projects and we get these kinds of questions from almost every end customer that we work with.
And in the majority of the time, rain has not been an issue. That being said, if we have an area where we know they have monsoons and heavy rain coming down for, let's say, every day, 5 or 6 hours, or the entire day, or whatever it may be, for a month or 2 months, we may come into some kind of problem. I'll say that normally, okay, when it's just raining, the rain will not affect the soil to the extent that we'll be able to pick it up. Number one, because we're able to differentiate between different types of water. So rainwater is different than potable water in its dielectric signature information, but also the fact that after it rains, the water will either trickle down deeper than our radar penetration or evaporate, depending on where you are in the world and the temperature. I'll give another, that being said, in Thailand, in Bangkok specifically, we've been working since 2016, doing roughly 6 scans per year for our leak detection approach. Some of the time it's been during monsoon season, although they try to have everything done during the dry season. But even when we've done projects in the wet season, it has been successful. Okay, I would recommend anywhere that you have such tropical weather to at least start and to understand the technology. We should start in the dry season. Okay, it's the easiest to understand, and also it will create the least amount of skepticism. Once we're into it, once we've started to work, once there's a full understanding of the technology also from their side, from my perspective, it doesn't really matter.
Okay. We've got another question from David, which is related to georesistivity study. Does the satellite radar technology detect groundwater source?
Anything that's between the surface and roughly about 5 meters, we can detect. If we turn off our filter, okay, and we're just looking for soil moisture, we can find groundwater, we can find rain, we can find wastewater, we can find potable water, we can find anything that you want, as long as it's saturating the soil, okay? I don't know exactly the circumstance you're discussing. From my experience, a lot of the time the groundwater tends to be deeper than that. Okay, there are seasons where the groundwater goes up, and then it could be relevant. But for the majority of the time, again, I may be off. I don't know exactly what country you're from and what the situation is there. But from my experience until today, majority of the time the groundwater is below 5 meters. To some extent, it could be also 20 or 100. But if it does come up in certain seasons, and it does almost everywhere, some places it does come up even to 2 or 3 meters close to the surface, then absolutely yes, we can identify.
David is from Manila in the Philippines, but I know you obviously you've been working in Bangkok a lot, and the groundwater level in Bangkok is very high. It must be between 1 to 2 meters below the surface. So has that been an issue for you in Bangkok?
It hasn't. I'll tell you from what I know. I've also been a few times with teams out in the field investigating. The majority of the pipes, because of the fact that the groundwater is so high in Bangkok specifically, the majority of the pipes are very low, I should say, in shallow ground. So they're no more than 1 meter deep. So the service pipes could be anywhere between 30 and 80 centimeters, and the main pipes maybe tops 1.5 meters. So they try anyway to keep it as close to the surface as possible. And as long as it's mixing with the ground, it doesn't matter. If the water goes up and it's fully covering the pipes, then it's a problem, because we can only identify water mixing with the ground. If water is mixing with water, we obviously will not identify it. And I can tell you that also from places in Europe where they have high groundwater in certain seasons, they've told us that they would very much like to use our technology, but let's wait for a specific season to get the optimum result.
Okay, thank you very much, Jonathan. That was an interesting session, and I hope that's given people some food for thought on how this technology works. I think that's the end of our questions. So unless you have anything more to say, I'll stop the recording.
Yeah, just thank you very much. And I'd be happy to discuss anything with anyone who participated today. You're more than welcome to contact me. I'm sure you can get my email through the IWA Water Law Specialist Group or through Gary directly. Thank you for your time.